Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Blake Creamer, and in this podcast, my guest and I are going to be giving you 8 players of interest from the Pacific Division who could be elite deep league options that you don't want to miss at the end of your drafts. Let's get to biz. Oh, yeah. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. The Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the #1 fruit-based fantasy hockey podcast out there. There's no competition whatsoever, and that's why we're #1. Okay. My name is Blake Creamer. I'll be your host today. Check me out on X and Blue Sky at Blake Creamer AG. Also, Apples and Ginos has a YouTube. We're doing stuff on there. And in fact, you want to be on YouTube to get the best experience for this episode here because we've got some great visualizations. That's a hard word to say. Also, check out the Apples and Ginos Discord. Link is in the description, but that's not why you're here. All right. Today, I have a friend of the show returning to help me talk about some deep league options for you and your fantasy squads. Players of interest, if you will. I did this last year and it was a lot of fun. It's Louis Boulet of lbhockey.com and the Zoobcast. Buddy, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Listen, it's the off season, so I've been deep in the coding trenches on my side of LB Hockey, taking advantage of the fact that I don't need to continuously update data. So it's refreshing to kind of jump out of that and back into player analysis because that's my bread and butter. That's what I love doing most. So I couldn't be more excited to get this with you today.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks again for being here. I totally relate to that. Nate and I were just talking about like we're grinding through projections right now, and we do like almost 400 players each. So you got your head down, and then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, what do I actually think of this player? Like I projected him out. Like, what do I actually think of him? So yeah, I'm with you, man. I love having these conversations. It's really good stuff. And I love having people smarter than me on the show to make me, just elevate the show up. So thank you very much, Louis. I appreciate that. Actually, everybody, you need to go on over to Louis' Blue Sky account. All right. He posted a dirty dangle in his ice hockey here. First off,
I was like, where is he going with this?
Yeah, right. He breaks the D-man's ankles, then he dangles the goalie out of his shorts. I mean, Louis, first off, what is your go-to celly when you score a goal like that? What are you doing?
This is gonna sound so big time, but like it's gotten to the point that I don't really have one. I kind of just go like, like good stuff. But if it's like a game that actually matters, it's kind of like mostly like a 2-hand up, like let's go.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And like looking at the bench, like let's keep this going, like let's keep this momentum and ride it and get another 1 or 2.
What a team player. You know what? I kind of go the other way. I want to be the center of attention. So I'll do something like, river dance, basically. Like just start river dancing with the skates. You know what I mean? Or the gritty, right? Shout out to Jake Wallman. He does that.
Yeah, so there was a time when I first learned from my dad, both my parents are from Winnipeg, so they were big Jets fans and Team Solani fans specifically. And when I first learned, I was a kid, like first year novice or whatever. I don't know what that's the equivalent to, like maybe U7, U9. And I first learned of like the Team Solani, like throw the glove in the air and like shoot it down. I did that in like a novice, like house league B level game. And it was hilarious just thinking back about it. But that's honestly probably the most I've ever put into the celebration. Maybe if there's like, some championship winning OT winner, I'll go a little crazy. But as for now, I can't remember anything more extreme than that.
You got to do it, buddy. It's a missed opportunity, but that's fine. Actually, fun fact, my wife caught me looking at a YouTube video trying to learn how to do the gritty properly. And then she filmed me like
that's a harrowing experience.
Yeah, exactly. That video exists. I'm trying to bury it, but she's got it backed up on some different things here. Never mind about that. All right. We got to move on, Louis. All right. We got serious business to take care of here. What Louis and I are doing today, folks, so we're going to dig in on 8 deep league options for your fantasy squads. These are guys that are ranked 200 and after in a lot of spots here. So we're going to do 1 player from each team starting in the Pacific Division. Again, like I said, I did this last year. I called them players of interest, and I had a lot of fun doing that last year. I was able to identify a bunch of gems, actually. Guys like Kent Johnson was in there, Marty Natchez, Morgan Geekie, PLD was another one I had in here, Thomas Harley. These are guys that, especially this episode here, these are guys that you can take a swing on late rounds of your draft. And I think they have the biggest potential to return a bunch of value. Louis, are you ready to go?
Absolutely. I can't wait.
This guy's ready to rock. Let's get the biz. All right. Oh, dang. You know what? There we go. If you're watching YouTube, I already effed up the presentation, so that's fine. First player, Olen Zellweger. You had me at hello, Olen Zellweger. This man's a unit. Yeah, pretty exciting young player here who I think could be walking into some nice opportunity with the Ducks. Obviously, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, Louis. Jackson Lacombe is the guy to own there in Anaheim. He had an amazing year last year. He's probably
unreal. My
year.
God.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think people are sleeping a little bit on Zellweger here. I think that there's a good chance that power play 1 could be his. It's far from decided. And something that Nate and I talked about during our projections episode is Joel Quenneville potentially running a top power play unit. And I think that is going to happen. And I think that Zellweger may have a good shot at that because I think he might be the better offensive D-man. I think Jackson Lacombe, all around better defenseman, no question about that. Certainly on the defensive end, but Zellweger, this guy is amazing. And there's a lot of things to like about Olen Zellweger. But let's look at some of the things that he was actually able to do this season here. So digging in on Zellweger, 20 points in 62 games, that's nothing to write home about. That's a 26-point pace. He had a 46% power play share with a really stinky Anaheim power play. So that's 5 power play points. 19 minutes average time on ice, whoop-de-doo, right? That show ain't no good. The metrics were a little bit better, though, I think, with Olen Zellweger, and I wanted to talk about that really quick. His individual chance and shot generation metrics amongst defensemen, pretty damn nice. He was 12th overall in the league in shots on goal per 60 and 23rd overall in individual scoring chances for per 60. So I don't know. And I'm excited to get your take on this, Louis, because the microstat stuff with Olen Zellweger, especially on the offensive end, jumps off the page, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that took a big jump. Like, I know this was really his first full-time season this year. He was like a little on and off the year before. But I was able to get enough data on him the year prior, and it's really interesting to me to see how he's kind of changed. Because coming into as a prospect, we always knew that he was more of an offensive guy, especially given the size. And he's been a favorite of mine dating back to like those draft times. But I think he put a lot of emphasis on continuing that offensive growth this year, maybe in exchange for a little bit of defensive regression. Like, you look at how his individual creation for himself, as you mentioned, the individual chances, the scoring plays, that went up. His ability to help the team on the breakout, and then continuing that at the other blue line and turning that into entries. That's where he's really shined the most, both in terms of establishing possessions off entries and creating off the entries that he doesn't necessarily settle for cycle plays on. And if he continues that trend, as you're showing right now, shout out lbhockey.com, go there to find the tools yourself. But I do think something like Brandon Montour, if he continues with that trajectory, is a little interesting. As you can see, they have pretty similar shapes in terms of their radar chart there, which tries to illustrate their general play style. And the comps are very promising. You've got Montour, Werenski, and Orlov all ranking in his top 3. And the one thing that kind of does bother me a little was Zellweger, and you mentioned Jackson Lacombe being there. I'm a huge Pavel Mintyukov fan, right? Like, I think actually, yeah, that's the Mintyukov jersey that I have right behind me. And as a huge 67s fan, I've always been, Mintyukov's probably the guy that I'm the most fan of, despite spending so little time on one of my favorite teams. So there's a lot of competition there. And given that the passing kind of stayed steady, if not dropped a little for Zellweger, his two-way underlying went down. And how does that kind of affect him in a really crowded and young and talented group in Anaheim? They added Jacob Trouba. I know he's not competing for the same type of role there, but that's another body that he has to have around him. Whether that will help him as a partner or impede him in his progress, I'm not sure. And then you mentioned the new coaching staff. The drop in a little bit of skating and defense for a small guy, that's not usually something that entices coaches to use him more, but I really believe in him. And I guess the one last thing I'll leave on with Zellweger is that just the other day in my own fantasy league, our Keeper League Discord, we were just talking about who do we think is the most likely young guy that Anaheim trades on their blue line. And I do think Zellweger is probably the most possible option. And I know there's been some people linking him to Edmonton, and that would be incredible for him and for fantasy owners of his. So I'm interested to see what he does next year, given everything that happened the year prior. the environment around him and all that, it's definitely a guy to keep an eye on that could burst, whether that's in Anaheim or not.
Yeah, that's a really interesting piece. I'm glad you mentioned Pavel Mintyukov, the fresh maker. All right, because yeah, they've got a glut of really good young defensemen there. I mean, headed up by Jackson Lacombe. This guy's a stud. I'm really excited about Jackson Lacombe this year, but his value is a little bit. It's not exactly where I was hoping it would be so far, just because smart fantasy managers are like, yeah, this guy's great and he looks good under the hood, but I mean, with Zellweger, some of the stuff that really stood out to me, all stuff you mentioned, but yeah, it's those zone entries at 5-on-5. Like, what the hell? I dug in on all three zones there. He was second in the league in zone entries per 60 to Quinn Hughes.
Unreal. Yeah.
Olen Zellweger. So Quinn Hughes, Olen Zellweger. All right. That's what we're talking about in zone entries per 60. And Anaheim, I've talked about this already when I was talking about Jackson Lacombe, but they weirdly led the league in percentage of offense from the D zone.
That doesn't surprise me.
They led the league.
It's just the guys that they have there they're all prospects, or were prospects at some point, that I really could not wait to see what they would develop into. Mintyukov was always this sort of guy that there's no comparable for him. The way he activates and just plays and takes over just by being him, like unabashedly himself, I couldn't really find much of a comparable. And you got Zellweger, the small guy, which there's been more of in the years that he was drafted, and then that's dropped since. So that's another pretty unicorn-ish case. And then Lacombe, just arguably the most improved defenseman of anyone in the league last year. It's really interesting to see what's going on in Anaheim for sure.
Yeah, a lot of fun there with the talent. And a lot of variance as well with Joel Quenneville coming in here. Like you mentioned, is he going to prioritize Zellweger? Probably not, right? But he's still a player of interest, right? Mm-hmm. And we have to take note when a guy like this is bubbling under the hood the way he is. And it's also worth mentioning about Zellweger, like, he's really bad at entries allowed, leading to scoring chances as well.
Yeah, the
right?
defense is brutal.
Yeah,
not good.
Like porous, like bad. You know what I mean? So, but again, with the zone entries, like talking with Corey Schneider before, the nice thing about that stat with young players, it's something that if they show it early, they're usually able to sustain it, right? So that sort of defensive part of the game can be worked on, right? But some of this offensive stuff that Zellweger has, you just can't teach. So anyways, that's what I like about him. I mean, at the very least, he's an insurance policy for Jackson Lacombe if he gets injured, because I think that Zellweger would go, not Mintyukov, to power play 1 if Jackson Lacombe did have it and got injured. That's sort of my take there. I mean, they could throw Mintyukov up there. But again, I should mention as well, Jackson Lacombe, ADP on Fantrax right now, 106, right? Which is okay value. Zellweger, ADP on Fantrax, 226. Okay,
wow, that's low.
Yeah, I mean, damn, you take a shot at this guy, like you could end up with a power play 1 defenseman. I projected him for 34 points this year in 19 minutes time on ice. I mean, with 11 power play points, that's fine. That'll play, right, as a last pick in your draft.
Yeah, and like with Kreider coming in as well, you want to talk about possible fantasy value. I know Kreider's been trending down, but one thing he's unarguably still one of the maybe top 10 in the league at is his ability to play the net front on the power play. And that's only going to boost Zellweger's value there.
Absolutely, buddy. So, yeah, shout out to Olen Zellweger. Again, you had me at hello. We really appreciate that. You ever seen Jerry Maguire? You know what's going on here?
Yes, don't worry.
I know you're a young man. No, yeah, Nate just toots in my face all the time. He doesn't get any of my references. And I'm getting to the point of age where movies like Jerry Maguire, in my mind, that's not an old movie, but a lot of people are like, yeah, that's freaking ancient. I don't even know what you're talking about. Be like, what?
Yeah, I've had the chance to watch plenty of movies on like old DVDs and all of that during the drive to and from Winnipeg, which is like, for us in Ottawa, 27 hours there, okay. 27 hours back. So listen, I've run the gamut on those. So I got your reference. Don't worry, buddy.
All right, I knew I liked you. All right, I liked you for a reason. All right, let's move on. We got to talk about another player here, another stud. All right, and we're heading over to Calgary. It's Matt Coronato. Yeah. Yeah, this is another player to me he isn't exactly a household name. Oh, by the way, I should mention this. I wanted to do this before we talked about Olen Zellweger. Get on YouTube because we're showing lbhockey.com's data viz that Louis does. It's amazing stuff. There's great tools over there. You can get it over at lbhockey.com. That's what we're looking at here today on YouTube. So get your biscuits over here and do it now. Anyways, we're talking about Matt Coronato. Yeah, guy underneath the surface, lots of stuff to like here. Something brewing. And I think I think some more opportunity is on the way for Matt Coronato. So looking at what he was able to do last year, he spent most of the year with Blake Coleman and Mikhail Backlund. That show ain't no good. Old man withers, and it's like 2 men and a baby. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. That's a reference you might not get, Louis. That's a little bit older, but yeah. I mean, heartbreaking line for sure. Matt Coronato in particular, pretty tenacious forechecker. And I love to see that. These guys were able to generate some offense in the zone, like cycling down low, but the finishing abilities of Coleman and Backlund, terrible, right? Subpar. And I'd love to see Matt Coronato play with some people that can actually finish and maybe give him some better opportunities, like some high danger passes. And I think there's a good chance that he gets moved up the lineup to play with Kadri and Huberdeau. That's sort of what I'm projecting. Not that he's going to stay there all year because we got Connor Zary in here as well, but I think Matt Coronato has as good a shot as anybody to get up on that top line. So, but I'd love to hear your take here, Louis, but let's look and see what Coronato was able to do. 47 points in 77 games. That's a 50-point pace. Very nice. And 17 power play points. I think power play 1 is a lock for Matt Coronato. I feel pretty good about that. I mean, they signed him to some nice money as well. I think they're going to feature him a little bit. So I really like that. And last quarter of the season too, this is worth noting, he was playing almost a minute and a half more than his season average, right? So he was playing up around 19 minutes where his season average was 17:35. So talk to me a little bit about this player, Louis. What do you like Matt Coronato? Are you interested at all in this player? Because he's going fairly late as well.
So I know we talked about, we'll get to the guy in LA, but we mentioned that in our messages leading to this episode as a guy that I liked a lot. But I think Coronato is maybe my favorite of the bunch here. I think he potentially is the most poised for a breakout of all the guys data-wise anyway. As you mentioned, he will likely move up higher up into Calgary's lineup. And even if he doesn't, you're looking at the top 9 group on the Flames. No matter where in the top 9 he plays, he should have plenty of options that at least offer some sort of, give and forth ability with offensive possession. So I'm really excited for that. And I was thinking the same about the power play. I actually texted one of my buddies who's a diehard Flames fan, shout out to Keldon, to confirm that Coronato was likely to be a power play 1 given what happened last year and how he ended. And he's like, yes, he's a mainstay on that. Don't even worry about it. So that's also very solid. So already the environment around him is conducive to more success. And when we dive into the actual data, pretty much every stat that I measured improved on his 2023-24 season going into last year. The one thing that didn't was like his transition attack, maybe a little bit, but that was a team-wide trend in Calgary where their rush offense in general just sunk big time. But as we can see here with the consistency spread visualizer, there were a ton of top line level outings in 2024-25. Like so many of his games that were manually tracked by Corey at all 3 zones were in the 85th percentile or better. And we also look at the decade average there. After the adjustment of the first couple of games, he was consistently improving his average performance as the year went on. So those are always the types of guys that I'm looking at. Let's say if you take the back half of the year, their point pace over the last 41 games, and you just double that to see how they'll get next year, or just players that generally got better. One person that I think profiled like this the year before was Dylan Guenther, right? Where he had some pretty solid average to above average outings, and as the year went on, he got more and more in the on the more elite side, and his decade average went up very similarly to how Coronato profiles here. And this is all done while shouldering pretty tough deployment, like as a 21-year-old. As you said, the teammates were fine at best. They were more defensive or checking than anything, not really helping him as much on the offensive side. But he wasn't getting the easiest deployment because Backlund is their shutdown guy. And the quality of competition as a result was also pretty tough. And just looking at his potential in past years, he's produced at every level. NCAA, he was a point per game. The year before in with the Wranglers, he was a point per game, and now he didn't even make the NHL level out of camp last year. That's insane to think about. So he still kind of had to make a little bit of that transition last year. I'm really excited to see what he does because all the signs point to a huge breakout for Coronato.
I love that. I like the Guenther comparison there. That gets me kind of juiced for this player because the guy I'm interested in, and I was already interested in him during the season, right? Because of the power play deployment. But then digging in, there's some outliers that are pretty interesting to me as well. Like when you dig in on the micro stats, this guy has high shot and shot assist contribution for the team, which is excellent, right? So shot contributions off the charts for him. I think if he does get moved to the top line, I'd expect more shots off of high danger passes, right? From Huberdeau. I'd expect a lot of rebound tap ins from the ultimate chucker, Nazem Kadri, if he's able to get up there, right? And fun fact, and I've mentioned this before and I'll do it again because it's so strange, but according to all three zones, Coronato led the entire league at 5-on-5 in offense originating from the neutral zone per 60 by a huge margin. Like what, and offense obviously being shots, shot assists, chance assists, but I don't think that's something to gloss over. Like it was enough data in Corey's data to, give us a pretty solid projection there. Like, what do you make of that? Why was he so good in that particular stat? Like, have you noticed that in some of the vises that you're working with and the data you're looking at, like that neutral zone offense per 60?
I'd say even without even thinking about the data or digging into that off the top of my head, it's just because the guys that he's playing with already, first of all, the decor in Calgary is like half Joel Hanleys and Braden Pahals and Kevin Balls, who aren't the most transitionally gifted offensively. And once again, he was playing with Coleman and Backlund, two guys that are not puck transporters at all. So he kind of becomes the default only option there. And due to having so much skill and prowess in that area, it means he's going to be relied on heavily for that. And I think being a bit of an unknown quantity for like other teams that may be doing a scouting report also helps him there as well, because he's not being targeted as much to be shut down at the blue line or anything. So as a result, I think the mix of both those things really allowed him to do a lot last year. And I wonder how much of that is going to continue the year after, because if he plays with Kadri immediately is the guy that's going to be the default carrier. That's one thing. Is I'm still really high on Nazem Kadri. I know the production hasn't been nearly as high as it was back in the day with Colorado, but he is still a transition beast. So if he gets put with him, I'm interested to see how the balance kind of goes either way. But no matter what, listen, he's super interesting to keep an eye on, and I can't wait.
Yeah, no, I like that. And that's the most coherent explanation I've heard of that so far. I remember talking with Corey in particular, and we were both like, I don't know. Like, that's so strange. Like, that's a weird stat. Like, but what you said makes a lot of sense. I would imagine that goes down again next year based on the reasons you mentioned. But what's not going to go down, I think, is this guy's contribution to the offense. And if he plays with better players and sticks on power play 1, we're probably looking pretty darn good here. This is a guy projected for 52 points in 18 minutes average time on ice. I think he has every opportunity to smash that projection. That's probably like a more of a floor projection. Like,
I'd say like a 30-30 is very possible for sure. Maybe even a 65 point. Like that seems to be the expectation from some of my Calgary fan friends. So I think that's pretty apt given how much the data likes him.
I love that. And Fantrax ADP for Coronato, 194.
That is so unbelievably low. Oh my God.
Yeah, this is a guy that, if he's around at 194, you're smashing it, right? You probably should be smashing it earlier than that. So anyways, again, shout out to Matt Coronato. Let's move on. We got to talk about Edmonton Oilers and the player of interest there, Isaac Howard. This is going to be an interesting one. Prospects to me, they're risky bisky, obviously. Like you don't really know what you're getting. There's, again, so much variance. You don't know what the mental situation is. You don't know even what the potential environment that the person's going to go into. Like there's a lot of balls in the air here with Isaac Howard, but I love this guy as a flyer pick late in your drafts, right? Like he's a Hobey Baker winner. He tied for the lead in the 2024 World Junior Championship for goals. He won a gold medal there, won a gold medal with the U.S. at the World Hockey Championships this past summer. Like this guy's ready to go. He's ready to play in the NHL. And he's potentially landed in the best possible spot for an offensive player to land as a prospect. That's crazy. Like it's well within the realm of possibilities that he plays in the top 6 here in Edmonton and with either McDavid or Draisaitl. And I think that he profiles a lot differently to me than some of the other guys that have been there, right? Like if you look at Draisaitl in particular, who did he play with last year? Podkolzin and Kapanen. Like,
yeah,
what?
Insane.
like, and Draisaitl is just good enough. It doesn't matter, right? But now if you get a guy like Isaac Howard, who does have an elite shot, this guy's shot is whips off the stick. I was watching some highlights and this guy's got an elite shot already, right? We're talking about Dylan Gunther. We're talking about Matt Coronato, like Isaac Howard. It's right up there. Like, it looks great. He's a good skater too. And also I looked it up. Mitch Brown at Elite Prospects tracked 14 of this guy's games as well. He's a shooter, right? This guy, big time individual shot and chance generator on his own. So to me, it's like, now you're getting to play with two of the best players in the entire world. Like, what's going to happen? I don't know. What are your thoughts on Isaac Howard? Do you think this is a guy that will land in that top 6? And if so, what can he do with it?
I think he will. I think it's in the Oilers' best interest to do so, both in terms of their short-term and long-term success. As you said, Draisaitl playing with, I mean, Kapanen's always had offensive skill, but he doesn't really have the brain to keep up with this hand. Like, that's one thing that my co-host at the Zoopcast, Josh, has always said, is that Kapanen is the, like, archetypal mold, essentially, for players that have unreal hands, but their brain is just too slow to fully utilize it to its potential. And then we have the reverse Kapanen archetype, where they're so smart, but their hands aren't there. But anyway, not even the player we're talking about. The point is, Howard brings both of that. And I wasn't the biggest fan of his back in his actual draft year. I remember watching him and thinking he was a little bit more reactive than proactive. Some of his plays with the puck, it felt like he was scrambling, and it was more of a like shot in a prayer than anything more commanding.
Yep.
But one thing he has always had and continues to develop and be elite, as you said, is a shot, like a shooting arsenal, both in terms of the type of shots he has and the quality of the release are unbelievable. And putting that with anyone that's as good of a puck mover as Draisaitl and McDavid is going to be really, really helpful for Howard's production for sure. And you already mentioned, I was going to bring up Mitch Brown as well, because I don't have any prospect data. I've looked into doing something on that front, but it's complicated with data sources. So I always default to Mitch Brown and the team at Elite Prospects and stuff, because it's unreal. Seriously, some of the best in the public sphere. But yeah, Howard, looking at all of his transition stuff and his puck touches, both in video and on the data side, I've really loved the evolution of his mindset and general conversion ability on entries. His entry success rate has been really good for a couple of years. And one thing, I mean, we mentioned my own beer league earlier. One thing I love doing personally, because I'm not a burner, I'm more of a guy that's going to cut in and try to dismantle a defense through hockey IQ rather than absolutely zooming past them. And this is one thing that I've seen Howard do a lot recently, is that he loves to cut in, delay, and kind of throw off the rush defense team's defensive shape and their form as a whole. And that should really allow for his high-speed teammate, whether that's a McDavid or a Draisaitl, to completely just dart down and take advantage of a stalled couple of defensemen, either if that's for a rebound or a tap-in or a chance for Howard himself even, because once that's done and there's a distraction, all he needs is a little bit of time to get a crazy release off, right? And that's not even touching on what I think is probably the biggest like hidden gem in his toolkit. Maybe not as much of a gem but everybody sees the shot and the production, but his off-puck feel is unreal, both in terms of his sense for knowing where to go and his timing on getting into those pockets of space. Mm-hmm. It's really good, again, for a teammate that's going to be a good on-puck option to distribute the puck. I'm really interested to see him combine that, his nose for the net as well. Like, we saw the Hyman explosion happen once, right? Howard has arguably more skill than that. Also a good nose for the net, off-puck feel, and he adds more on entries that could maybe take some of the load off of McDavid or Draisaitl. Overall, I think we're in for a possible crazy rookie season if he does get that opportunity.
Yeah. And what's the risk? Like, I don't think people are running out to grab Isaac Howard. Like, I'm sure he's got a little bit of, people talking the way that we're talking. He's going to get in the top 6. Like, even that gives him a little bit of value. But I think there's more to it than that. Like you said, this is a guy that can sort of create his own space and then make space for his teammates. Well, if your teammates are Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, like, damn. You know what I mean? Like, they don't need a lot of space, right? And then it's vice versa as well. Like, what does this player do with the space created by playing with McDavid and Draisaitl? Like, I'm kind of into this guy. I'm like low-key interested in him this season, right? I projected him for 36 points, right? Which I think, and that's in like 14 and a half minutes average time on ice. I mean, we've seen this story before, right? All the top guys in Edmonton, they're going to eat, they're going to get a ton of minutes, including Hyman, right? He's still going to get a ton of minutes. So I think, ice time, especially for the rookie, is going to be hard to come by. He's not going to touch the power play, really. I do have him for 6 power play points, maybe on power play 2. I don't know. Maybe he gets a cup of coffee on power play 1 if things aren't going well and they want to change things up, because he does have.
There's always injuries, right? Like,
yeah. He has a skill set there. And it's always worth mentioning too, with certain prospects, most prospects actually, like defensively, it's pretty subpar. Like, first off, Isaac Howard's not a very physical player. And I think just that lack of defensive acumen can sometimes be a hindrance, like, to you getting out there on the ice, especially with a team like Edmonton, who has, Stanley Cup aspirations, right? Like, when push comes to shove, this guy will probably be playing like 11 minutes a night. You know what I mean? But I think there's going to be pockets of the season where he is getting, 15 to 16 minutes a night with good opportunity. And I think he's going to put up some points doing that. So this is a really interesting player. I really like your take on that. How many points do you think he can get this year?
Oh, the variance is so high. Like, truly, that's just the statistician in me thinking, right? But the mean, I don't know. I'm really not sure. I think it could be 40, but you could also, I think that's probably a good middle point. But the range could be anywhere between 25 and maybe even 60 if there's a big injury or two that isn't one of the 2 big guys, and he ends up taking like Nugent Hopkins' spot on the PP1. And then things just, steamroll from there. It's definitely a guy that I've got my eye on and will probably pick with one of my either first waiver pickups or late draft picks in my own league, because I'm interested to see what happens. And we'll probably be able to tell at least right away what his contributions will be early on. Sure, it could increase as the season goes on, but then you could just pick him up later. So that's not a big problem.
Watch him not make the team. I don't know.
That would be insane. Then he's on the NA spot. Then he's on the NA spot. Done.
Nice. Yeah, we're fine. That's fine. Unless you don't have that in your league. And then what the hell, Isaac Howard?
Then you got to contact your commissioner about that.
All right. Nice. All right. We got a plan in place, and I feel good about that. Isaac Howard, he's a young Louis Boulet out there. All right. He does that. Actually, you're pretty young yourself.
I wish.
I don't even know.
God.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on. We got to talk about the LA Kings here and Alex Laferriere. He's a beauty. This guy signed a new contract here, 3-year contract. Love that for LA. Love that for Alex Laferriere. Really good stuff. Let's look at what he was able to do. This is a guy that I think you're excited about, so I love that. I'm pretty damn excited about it as well. This is a team here, LA, that could really use what Laferriere brings to the table, right? So on the season, 42 points in 77 games, really nice. That's a 45-point pace with only 4 power play points. So to me, he did this all with really no power play time, and that's fine. That's probably what's going to happen again this year. So to me, it's always nice to see a guy that can put up some production without that. In terms of some of the interesting stuff here, just individual chance and shot generation. Where is it? Yeah, Alex Laferriere, 47th overall on the year in shots to go per 60 in the league, and 14th overall in individual scoring chances to go per 60. That's according to Natural Stat Trick. So that's a nice place to be. Like, this is a guy that is generating chances at an elite rate for himself, right? And that's what happens when you play with a guy named Kevin Fiala. Okay. Kevin Fiala is an absolute beauty, one of my favorites. But yeah, talk to me about Alex Laferriere, Louis. What do you like about him? Like, I think he has a decent role that actually increased in the playoffs. Doesn't need power play 1. What do you think about this guy?
So I am very high on Laferriere, and when I say that I am high, I mean personally, yes, but the LB hockey model is super high on him. He is projected to have the 63rd highest SPAR, so standings points contributed above replacement, in my model next year. That is a little crazy, but what really drives this and how much can legitimately be represented in terms of fantasy value, I think, is the big difference here, because he's truly, I think, established himself as one of the best lesser known support forwards in the league. Because you ask him and everybody's immediately going to think, oh, did you mean Alexis Lafrenière? No. We're talking about the better of the two here. Let's make things clear. But as I have
Catching
nothing
strays
against the
here on
other
the
one.
Apples and Ginos
Listen,
podcast. Oh my god.
I have nothing about the other one, but Laferriere to me is the better player currently. I do think there's a bit of underrated, diverse scoring potential with him. Off the rush, in zone, creating for himself, off puck and at the net front. All of those areas score pretty highly for him, but he's kind of held back by the finishing. And as we can see, it's not just on the shooting side. Obviously, the puck movement is great. So we have his offensive puck movement profile here for 2024-25. And it shows that not only was his support game done defensively, but also especially through keeping passing sequences alive with and without the puck. He's also a very consistent player game over game. And that all has made him into one of the more reliable pieces on the Kings, maybe the most at this rate. And we talked about turning efficiency into influence, becoming less of a support player and taking more command over the game, because those are really the kinds of players, the ones that influence the play and have everything go through them. And we can see he already has a high flow, which is a pretty good indicator. But those are usually the guys that drive more play and get more production. I do wonder how much he could learn specifically from Kopitar, who is a good player who merges both of those games. He's always been known to be a good two-way player and a good support option, despite not being the most dynamic, creative, or manipulative guy, especially at this stage of his career. But Laferriere, I think, could definitely tend to learn a lot from him, both how he continues to keep up those defensive abilities, but also channels that into getting out of the zone into the transition and then the offensive zone and getting points out of that. That's definitely the next step. Honestly, the biggest thing is definitely finishing so far, because all of his rates on the shooting side are really good, but the conversion ability is not there. So there is easily a world where Laferriere kind of breaks out next year, but it does hinge on a couple things.
Yeah, it's just a guy I'm excited about. First off, I love the way you say this man's name properly, right? That's the way to do it.
I'm a francophone, so I kind of have to.
But my son's in French immersion. I need to sit him down. I need actually some lessons myself. He's doing the thing, but anyways, yeah, this guy's just a beauty. Again, very late pick. You can get this guy in like 150 to the 250 range, like depending on how engaged your league is there. But in terms of what he was able to do with the Kings, he led the team at 5-on-5 in shots on goal per 60, individual scoring chances 4 per 60, zone exits with possession. Right, he did that, and he's also second in shots off the rush. So, and he did it all with limited minutes. So you're exactly right, though, that finishing. And I think it's just kind of par for the course when you got a young player like this. I mean, this guy's turning 24 this season. I expect that efficiency to go up, especially if he's able to stay on a line with Kevin Fiala, right? Who to me is, easily the best offensive player on the Kings, right? In terms of generating chances, just offensive contributions.
So talented. Yeah.
Oh, he's unbelievable, right? I'm a big fan of Kevin Fiala, and if he was on any other team, I think he'd be, closer to like a 90-point player, right? But on this defensive squad here, they do things a little differently. But the fact is, Laferriere, damn it, son of a gun! Now I'm overthinking it. Anyways, he plays with Byfield and Fiala, right? So, and Byfield, I'm expecting him to take another step as well.
I think Byfield is ranked around 50th in my model next year for as far like they've got a lot of young pieces that are going to continue to grow. We won't get into the decor on LA because woof with the new signings there. Cody Ceci, 4 times 4.5. As a Sens fan, oh god.
You know what? If anybody can make a guy into a good defenseman, it's LA, right? That team does it by committee. They have a very rigid system and the players just play really well inside that system, right? So I think, if you want to shelter Cody Ceci, put him on the LA Kings. I don't know. Maybe
for me, it's like the flashbacks to Cody Ceci, to DJ Smith hockey, and then just like because he's there now.
That was a bad time. Yeah.
Listen, I'm just happy for Ken Holland and Cody Ceci that they're reunited together. Maybe it works out for them better this time.
Oh dang! What a nice guy, Louis. That's excellent work there. But go get yourself some. How do you say it?
Alex Laferriere.
Alex Laferriere. Beautiful.
There you go.
It made it sound like I was making fun of it, but that's actually a legit attempt.
That was not bad. That was not bad.
Okay, thank you, buddy. Yeah, what do you think this guy can do? Like, I've got him projected this upcoming season for 48 points, including just 6 points on the power play, 16 and a half minutes. So a very similar season. Like, I don't see where any more opportunity is going to come for him, but like he said, I do think that efficiency can bump up a bit. I gave him like an 11.2 shooting percentage. That's sort of where I landed on with him. So that's up a couple percentage points from what he was able to do. What do you think he can do? What's the ceiling case for this player?
I think a lot of it depends on the Byfield development as well, given they're probably going to be running mates there. Ceiling, I don't know that he hits 60, but maybe a good 55. Again, so much hinges on finishing. It's funny because like the more we talk about it, the more it's like on the shooting side, he's a rather influent player with poor efficiency. But on the passing side, it's the complete other way, where he's very efficient in continuing passing sequences, but he's not the most influent in terms of how they unfold. So it's a really interesting case for a player. I think 50 is probably where I'd set my projection, ceiling just under 60. But again, with a Byfield explosion and Laferriere learning to properly convert, that would do wonders for that second line in LA.
Hell yeah. And he's a beefer to boot. This guy should be a 100 hit guy year to year. So that's excellent. ADP on Fantrax right now for this player, 225. Okay. You could do a hell of a lot worse at that point, right? Because injuries happen too, right? We get injuries to some of these guys on the top power play. I think Laferriere is going to go up there and get the biz, right? And now
if Kempe goes down, I mean, like maybe Laferriere kind of gets the chance to be like, okay, this is finally the opportunity that I get to kind of break through and start finishing because I have to, and I'm relied upon as the guy, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe that's something that could happen as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you'd be one of the first guys to move up to that top unit if that did happen. So nice looking player. I'm excited about this guy. And again, you pick him up late, you're loving life. At the very least, he's going to be a premium streamer for you for LA. All right, let's move on to the next player. We got to talk about the San Jose Sharks. And they picked up the Klingon, John Klingberg. Oh my God, buddy, change your shorts. What are you doing? You got dingleberries in here. I'm sorry about that, Louis. That's
you had me at the Klingon and then you lost me after that.
I'm glad I had you at the Klingon.
I'm not even a Star Trek guy, but at least I got that part.
Okay. All right. I actually just learned out what dingleberries are, learned what dingleberries are. I would call my kids dingleberries all the time. And then I think my wife was like, you know what that is, right? I'm like, I don't know, a type of berry.
What's more embarrassing, that or the Gritty video?
You know, she's got a lot of dirt on me right now. That's why, you know, we're always going to be together. We're happy. But, you know, if that ever changes, like, I'm going to have to stick it up. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah, she's got all the dirt, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. We got to talk about the Klingon. All right, he's clinging on the shorts here. They signed him in San Jose. It's excellent work. They actually signed Dmitry Orlov as well, so now they have a couple, you know, borderline. Well, with Orlov, they have an NHL caliber defenseman, and with the Klingon, they've got he's a borderline. I think he showed up pretty darn well in sheltered minutes there in Edmonton, especially in the playoffs. Like, he was able to do some stuff there with Jake Wallman. What did he have last year? 4 points in 11 games for Edmonton. Whoop-de-doo. That's fine. He got 4 points in 19 games in the playoffs there and averaged 19 minutes time on ice. So it's a nice little thing there for John Klingberg because, yeah, this guy got his hip resurfaced. What the hell? You know, like that's a big surgery there. Like, you need your hips to skate, folks. And yeah, he's been really fighting it here the last little bit. I think that, like his minutes when he was out there in the playoffs with Wallman, they were actually 5th in the league in time on ice together at 5-on-5. So that's pretty good. They were also 3rd in expected goals for per 60 at 5-on-5 amongst D pairs that played like 100 minutes or more. So just, you know, give this man his flowers a little bit. He was winning his minutes out there, I think, John Klingberg, in the playoffs. And yeah, like I said, this guy he underwent bilateral hip resurfacing surgery. That's insane. So one of the things when I was digging in on John Klingberg, because we don't have very much data to go on in the last little bit, he was just like, I was reading some of his interviews, and what he talks about in those interviews is kind of the evolution of his game or how he's had to change it, right? Because this is a guy that was kind of foot on the gas in the offensive zone and then didn't really give a damn in the defensive zone. You know, in his high octane days in Dallas there, they had players that could sort of pick up the slack when Klingberg was out there. But now he's kind of focusing on bringing balance to his game and focusing more on the defensive end. And now he's going to one of the worst defensive teams in the entire league. So, you know, by all intents and purposes, he's probably going to get caved in out there. But I still think that the main reason I'm interested in with Klingberg here is power play one, right? I think he's going to run power play one. I think you signed John Klingberg to San Jose because you want an actual defenseman quarterbacking the power play there instead of the 5 forward set they ran at times last year, which, you know, it's a cool idea in theory, but, you know, I don't think San Jose is really the team to be doing that. So now they got John Klingberg there. Talk to me about John Klingberg. Is this a guy you have ever had on your teams? And do you think that he can kind of run it back a little bit and maybe provide a little fantasy value here?
Actually, now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever had Klingberg on any of my teams. Like the main leagues I'm in are not like the ones that I would see him thriving in most would be like a points only league. And I don't think I've had one of those, not seriously anyway, in a while. But that's the thing, right? That's his bread and butter. He remains a super talented puck mover and power play D-man. I don't have any data on him last year due to him playing only 11 games, but I do have some on him for 20. Wow, do I even have some for 23, 24? He's been injured, the poor guy. Anyway. Yep. The point is, as you said, San Jose is a really interesting team for him to go to. He's got the open power play spot, and I am a huge Dmitry Orlov guy. I've loved him. I know he didn't work out the best in Carolina, but I think that was more of a systems thing. And Orlov is kind of a little all over the place in what he does, and Rod Brindamore runs a really tight ship over there.
Yep.
So I'm interested to see what they do, because they could run just a veteran established partner pair between Orlov and Klingberg. They could try to pair him with maybe my favorite defenseman prospect in the league in Luca Cagnoni. Ever since I've scouted him in 2023, I've been a huge fan of his, and I think he's one of the better up-and-coming puck movers that not many people talk about. So he could be a mentor for him and really teach him the offensive puck-moving side. Or he could be more of a complementary partner for a more defensive shutdown type in Shakir Mukhamadullin. And that is probably the way I'd lean. As we can see, we have the line compatibility tool up here for a potential pairing between Klingberg and Shakir. And funnily enough, Shakir is Klingberg's 4th most ideal line mate in our model across the entire league. And Klingberg is Shakir's number 1. So I've updated the data since the tool, so you can't see it there, but that's the point. And I think that could be really interesting because you could run this as the 3rd pair. You could leave Orlov up in the top 4. You could run still Ferraro and Liljegren, and maybe there's an open spot for Cagnoni there. But this allows you to still have a player who you can send out in Klingberg, who can still play with the Celebrinis and the Smiths and the Eklunds or whoever's in the top 6 at the time, while Mukhamadullin kind of steps back and takes care of the physical shutdown side. And honestly, that might be even better than playing Klingberg with Cagnoni, because then he can observe from a distance and kind of learn off ice. Plus, I think those two together would be a little too much to bear defensively because of how much of a black hole it would be. Right. In the bad sense, obviously. But yeah, I'm interested to see what he does. There's a lot of options there. I'm not sure. Like, again, he's such an unknown that it's hard for me to come up even with a projection of any time, like of any sort. So what do you have?
Yeah, well, for Klingberg, what did I have for him? 40 points. So I got him getting 10 goals, 30 assists, 15 power play points, 20 minutes average time on ice. So just above 20. And I think that, like, there's not much more room to go here, especially with the team that he's on. Like, I think this is close to ceiling of what he might be able to do. And we're also hoping that he's completely healthy and ready to go, right? Which I think what I saw in the playoffs makes me believe that he's good to go. He's going to be prepared coming into the season. But yeah, I mean, I bumped up his block numbers a little bit just because he's going to be playing on San Jose as well, right? So there's a little bit of value. Yeah. I've got him over 100 blocks. It's not something he normally does, but I am kind of excited about Klingberg on San Jose just because he's such a great puck moving defenseman, right? And so, yeah, let's say they put him out there with Shakir, right? Hopefully he's like, I don't know too much about that player, but hopefully he's good at like puck retrievals, right? Retrieve the puck, win those battles, get it to Klingberg in motion, and then Klingberg can rush it up, or he can feed one of these young studs, right? Macklin Celebrini, he's just gonna go bonkers this year. I'm super excited about Celebrini and what he brings to the table.
Celebrini, man. Oh my, I think, not to spoil my top 50 like spar rankings projections that I've got coming out in probably September, but Celebrini is projected to be in the top 10. Like,
Hell yeah.
he's unreal.
Yeah, it's just, I love what I'm seeing from this player. I love sort of the mentals as well. Like, and you know, it's not really fair to compare him to Connor Bedard, but just from a real, like, zooming out a little bit, and you see kind of how Bedard is dealing with a similar situation, right? I mean, he doesn't have the young talent to play with, but he's got some reasonable talent there, and how frustrated Bedard is getting. Whereas you look at Celebrini and it's like,
I say the vibes are drastically different. He's
having fun out there, right? Like, and they're not winning. Like he obviously wants to win, and he gets frustrated too, right? But I feel like there's in San Jose, there feels like a little bit of a better vibe there, and maybe it's with the head coach, like what is his name, Warsofsky? Is that?
Yeah, David Warsofsky.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's because of him. He's a young guy. He wants the team to be exciting. That's something he stated, and they were last year. We were, weirdly into San Jose going into last season. And yeah, like Eklund's a guy I like, Celebrini, obviously, Will Smith. So I just like that John Klingberg is going to be, he's good at breaking the puck out, and these guys are good at bringing the puck in, right? So it makes sense. I think you're right. He does need a guy like Shakir, a more defensively sound defenseman who can retrieve those pucks properly, because that's not something that Klingberg is really going to do, right? Like,
Also, to correct myself, it was Ryan Warsofsky. I was thinking of another hockey Warsofsky.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's why I said Warsofsky. I always do that with John Hines in Minnesota as well. We just call him Jay Hines because I always forget. I'm like, Jack?
Yeah.
John? What?
Yeah.
Do any player? Jay Hines. All right, like the ketchup. Shout out to Ryan Warsofsky. All right, he's a legend. But anyways, I just think power play 1 for Klingberg. This is the most anyone's ever talked about John Klingberg, by the way, in a fantasy hockey podcast. And we're doing it, folks. We don't care. All right. This is a deep dive. But yeah, I think power play 1, he's earmarked for that, which I think is going to be pretty good, right? At his best, Klingberg was a high IPP guy with the man advantage. So he's getting in on those points, right? High shot attempt guy as well. I just think that they need another weapon there on the power play, and they never had any danger from the point, right? Like, they didn't have a guy that could shoot back there, right? And it's worked out okay for them, but I think this will be a nice weapon. And Klingberg's ADP on Fantrax, 231. Hey, so, I mean, what's the harm? Like, you could potentially be sitting on a power play 1 defenseman that I think, if all goes well, he could get 20 power play points. And that's absolutely valuable, right? It's just, and if he doesn't work out, you kick him to the curb. Who cares, right? They put, what's that other young guy there that I like? Jack Thompson. Just put him out there, right? Or Liljegren, right? Yeah, Liljegren. Put him out there, right? I could see those guys running the power play as well, but I do think it's going to be Klingberg's first, and I'm low-key excited about that because the Sharks are a fun team to watch. All right, let's stop talking about the Klingon, all right? He's really clinging on. He's not letting go. But that's fine. We got to talk about the Seattle Kraken. We got to release the Kraken. We got to release Kaapo Kakko. He's been released from the New York Rangers to a much better situation for him personally in Seattle. That's an elite segue. Am I right, Louis?
Of course, yes.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate the validation. Let's talk about that. Kaapo Kakko here, what he was able to do. Yeah, lots to like. First off, like, going to Seattle from the Rangers, he just wasn't getting consistent minutes or opportunity in New York, right? There was a time where that third line with Hedel, Alexis Laferriere, and Kaapo Kakko, that was like, the next big thing. What a great third line, right? And it just did not materialize there. And ever since then, I think Kakko's been kind of on the outs, right? Obviously, there was like some well-documented stuff with Peter Laviolette and Kakko and missing time and this and that. But his minutes just reflected poor performance when he was with New York, and he played sheltered minutes down there as well. So when it came to Seattle, his time on ice went up, right? He was relied on to do a lot more. Possession metrics and shot share went up, right? And some of that's due to a time on ice increase. But something I noticed digging in, the Corsi for percentage when he was with Seattle rose by 4 percentage points from 47.5% when he was with New York to 51.2%, which is pretty damn nice, right? That's the difference from being caved in and from potentially winning your shifts, right? At least in terms of possession. So more power play time on ice as well for Kaapo Kakko. So what do you think? Do you think, like, they obviously just re-signed this guy? He's a part of their future plans. there's so much variance again with Seattle. Now we got a new head coach in here, Lane Lambert, who,
Yeah.
I mean, he's a defensive guy, right? So, that's great. Like, let's shore up the defense. Seattle's defense was terrible. Team defense was awful. So let's shore that up. But is it going to equal more offense? And is Kakko going to be one of Lane Lambert's guys?
I think he could be, like, because he has turned from more of a, like, high profile prospect to now just being that dependable middle six guy who, going to chip in a little offensively. He's going to get a little bit. I know that defensive metrics came down specifically last year, but in Seattle as a whole, they've been getting better for him. And he's a really good checker, but that hasn't really reflected yet on the fantasy side. And I think that could be hinting at his peripheral value trending up a little bit. If we look at his forechecking recoveries, he's almost in the 80th percentile over the last 3 years, Wade. And similarly for exit disruptions, which is where he's coming in and kind of putting in pressure on opposing defensemen trying to break the puck out. So those are two very physically demanding and just generally contact-inducing skills. And I think that maybe if he just gets a little more aggressive on those, he's already fairly good at doing it. But if he leans into it more, and that comes with more physicality and aggressiveness, could turn into more hit volume, right? And that could bring up his peripherals as a whole. And I personally have, I think he's a good passer too, but I think there's a better offensive option on Seattle if I'm going to do a little bit of a twist reveal here, because my personal pick would be Shane Wright for this slot. I think it's another guy we talked about transitioning from a high potential scorer to a more dependable guy. Shane Wright kind of fits that bill, as in he was very highly sought after, and then over the last few years, his stock has come down a fair bit. But over the last year, I think it went up a lot, especially for me. Like, he had a 41 game stretch where he hit 35 points. Like, that's a half season where he's on pace for 70 points. 70. Shane Wright in his essentially rookie season. That's unbelievable. And he's a guy who, as we mentioned, he has the pedigree to at least replicate and extend some of that to a degree. And I do think offensively he's more of a passer, similarly to Kakko. He's more of a passer, but he's a very strong finisher, and he always has been. Unfortunately, that means a lower volume in terms of shots. So again, not great for peripherals and general fantasy value, but he's another guy who's smart physically and could see that quantity of hits come up again with more aggressiveness. They're two parallel images of each other, I think, and it's really interesting that they're both on the same team and both in a similar environment on a similar trajectory. And either way, whether you're picking Kakko or Wright, you have plenty of good shooting ringers in Seattle to complement them. Ideally, you have a Jared McCann on the left wing. If not, then maybe you throw in an Eli Tolvanen in there. But those are two guys that will shoot the puck a lot and would get either Kakko or Wright a lot of assists and just general chances offensively.
Yeah, I love that. Shane Wright was a guy that kind of came out of nowhere last year. I mean, obviously he has acumen, right, as a draft pick. I always remember when he was drafted, whatever his position was, like fourth or whatever, where he was supposed to go one, and like how he stared over like at the table, right, for the Canadians or whatever. It's like, oh, damn, that's pretty icy. But I guess my big thing with Shane Wright, like I think per minute, I would much rather have Shane Wright. But I feel like Kakko is going to get more deployment. I think he's going to get more burn here. And they, granted, it's a new coach, so we could see whatever. But I like Kakko with Beniers and Jaden Schwartz. I think that's such a solid line. That's a puck possession line. And then you got a guy that is pretty good forechecker in Kaapo Kakko, right? So he can win the battles, get it to these puck possession guys like Matty Beniers. That's a player that I love. I brought him up last year in this.
We talked about him last time.
It's just, it may never happen, right? We also like Seattle's the stream team. They have a, they have a top nine. They're like a way lesser version of Carolina, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's top nine. You're like, they're interchangeable, right? I'm just looking even at Daily Faceoff right now. They got that line I talked about, Kakko, Beniers, and Schwartz, which I think should stay together. Right. And then Shane Wright is down centering the third line, but with Mason Marchment and Eli Tolvanen, which is a great line.
That's really good. And even then, I think Stevenson had a really poor showing last year for his expectations. And the contract means he's probably going to continue to get those opportunities.
Yeah.
But new coaching staff, right? There's kind of you lose that, you got that memory loss now, and you're going in with a fresh mind. Potentially you move up right and he takes up the second line spot. And if that's the case, he's playing next to Jared McCann, who has one of the best releases in the game.
Yeah.
And that perfectly fits his play style. So, there's a world where both Kakko and Wright play in the top six with pretty ideal line mates for them. And that could kind of spark something offensively.
Yeah, I'm just hoping to see like a little bit more traditional deployment, right? I mean, but I guess when you have like their top nine they're good kind of middle six players. They're just a bunch of middle six players that are all really good at kind of their own thing. But I mean, I want to see who stands out, right? Jared McCann's another guy. Just give him the minutes, like give him the 3-minute power play treatment. What the hell are we doing? Like,
I have a soft spot for him because he picking him and Vince Dunn up towards the end of the 2022-23 season just absolutely locked in the dub for me that year. Yeah. And I love those guys. I love those players. They have really solid data on my side of things. And it's just McCann is just so fun to watch with his wrist shot. Like, we don't talk enough about how good that release is. Seriously.
Yeah, he's a special player, and I hate when I see special offensive players like that not getting the special offensive treatment. So, we'll see. It'll probably be another year of 2.5 minutes power play time on ice for Jared McCann, and that's fine. But for Kaapo Kakko, I actually projected him for 50 points. 17 minutes, 50 points. But obviously, I'm baking in his role towards the end of the year. I'm thinking about his contract as well. I think they like this player, and I'm also projecting a bounce back from Matty Beniers. And I do like Jaden Schwartz. I know he's sort of the third guy on that line. I love the underlings. He's a hit and miss kind of player, but he's doing everything well under the hood. This is maybe a bit of a risky, like a kind of a ceiling projection because we do have some variance there, but I just like the player and I think he's going to get some opportunity there. People have written off Kakko as a bust in a lot of circles, and I just think there's a bit of juice left to be squeezed. So that's my 2 cents on Kakko, but we'll see what's what. And his ADP 310. Kaapo Kakko 10. I mean, yeah, he's waiver wire material. So you don't even have to draft Kaapo Kakko. You just leave him out there, wait for the first 10 games. You'll see that I was right. And then you just go slam that and you pick him up immediately.
Do you have would you happen to have Shane Wright's ADP on hand? How easy would that be to look up?
Yeah, let me find it, man. Let's see. It's got to be late. It's got to be later than that. I don't see how. Yeah. But like you said, though, to me, he's the per minute guy. That's who I want. If Shane Wright is getting moved up the lineup, I'm much more interested in him than I am in Kaapo Kakko. Shane Wright's is 267.
Oh,
so yeah, and that's on Fantrax. So yeah, I mean, people are a little bit more on the Shane Wright, probably because of exactly what you said. The guy, he went off towards the back half.
Yeah,
there.
I picked him up at some point last year. Yeah,
he was doing a lot for fantasy, and obviously he hits a hell of a lot more than Kakko does. So yeah, he's angry. He wanted to go to Montreal. Damn it, he's just extremely angry. All right, let's move on. We got to talk about pretty much the best player in the league, plays for Vancouver Canucks, Connor Garland, the turtleneck. Yeah, I'm. Fun fact: I've got some turtlenecks on order, but they're not actually turtlenecks. They're dickies. Do you know what a dickie is?
No, I'm not. Yeah. That's not my type of wear. I'm more of polos in the summer, hoodies in the winter kind of guy.
Oh, damn. Well, you know what? You're looking very dapper, but I'll tell you what would elevate the look: a dickie. Okay, a dickie is basically the neck part of a turtleneck that you just put over your head, right? There's no shirt. It's just the neck. So you put it on, then you put the shirt over top of it, and then it looks like you've got a turtleneck going on.
I see. Well, so what we have like similar stuff, but like it's just like a kashku, like in the winter.
Oh, okay.
That's yeah.
What'd you call it?
It's the French word for it. It's a kashku, essentially, because it hides your neck, right?
So translation of kashku, dickie. All right. I think
it's essentially a scarf, but a tube. Okay. It's exactly what that is. Yeah.
You know what? I could talk about this all day with you, buddy. Yeah, but I do have a couple dickies on order. Fun fact, everybody. And I've got some chains. So I'm going to go, with the dickie and chain.
We're getting hype beast Blake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But we're trying to get the demographic. We're trying to reach out. Like last week, I was wearing a deep V, basically that went down to my belly button. And now
the Brady Tkachuk special. Was it ripped too?
You know what? Next time I will. Maybe I'll just do a shirt. We'll see what's what. Anyways, we're talking about Connor Garland. I'm sorry I got derailed. He wears a neck guard, folks. That's the connection here. Anyways, this short king, this legend. I love Connor Garland. He's one of my favorite players to watch. Certainly my favorite player on the Canucks to watch. And I don't think it's going to be a surprise that I'm excited to talk about him. When you watch the games, he's all over the puck. He does it all, right? Connor Garland scores big goals. He is really amazing at extending offensive possessions. That's what I noticed more than anything else. It's like this guy, his board battles are elite. He just gets low. He gets insanely low on the ice and just goes around people's legs like a little, I don't know, weevil or something like that. I don't know what's happening. I don't even know what a weevil is. I'm trying to picture.
A weevil is a Pokemon, Blake. I think you meant weasel.
Weasel. Oh, isn't a weevil an animal as well besides Pokemon?
Honestly, you might be correct, but I just immediately go to Weavile, the Pokemon.
Weavile. Okay, so yeah, that's the Weevil Pokemon comparison. We're losing it. All right. But anyways, Connor Garland,
the hour mark. Yeah, it's off the rails.
Exactly. Yeah, people might have turned it off at this point, and that's fine. But come back, folks. All right, we're going to talk more about Dickies and Weevils
and Pokemon.
And Pokemon, yeah, as we should. But yeah, this guy extends offensive possessions like, nobody else on the Canucks anyway. He checks. He'll fight if he has to. Like, it's just, to me, if Connor Garland was like 6 foot tall and a little bit more efficient, he'd be a point per game player. Like, I absolutely believe that. This is a guy that has earned his ice time here in Vancouver. When he first got here, it was kind of the 16-minute treatment, third line, and it was an elite third line he was on. But he got moved up the lineup last season. His time on ice, 18 minutes, 39 seconds. That's the highest of his career. He produced 49 points, 50-point pace. That's excellent. 16 points on the power play. That's a career high. 7 goals on the power play. That's a career high. And I feel like this is sort of his role now on the team. And I also think that the way the Canucks roster is currently constructed, he's going to be in the top 6, and there's nowhere else for him to really go, right? Granted, the second line is Philip Hedl and Evander Kane, all right, which is kind of more like a third line to me. But, they're going to be getting more minutes as a quote-unquote third line, and I think Garland's going to be out there. Plus, I think there's a good chance he gets on power play 1. If not, he'll still kind of be in and off the top power play. So talk to me about Connor Garland and why he's comparable to Connor McDavid.
Well, listen, unlike Connor McDavid, he's an excellent tertiary piece. As you said, like, he is just one of the ideal third guys on a line. As you said, he's going to be in the top 6, and he's going to bring plenty of versatility to whichever line of the top 6 he is. Like, he is a consistent shutdown forward. He brings enough offense to kind of mesh with the more dynamic partners, but still really take control of the checking in defensive side. I could see him bounce between Hedl and Pettersson's line, depending on if the Canucks are trying to make different things work. Yeah. I'm not an Evander Kane fan at all, but Hedl I do like to get behind because I still think there's a lot of puck skill there, and it's just the injuries and it's just his whole development path has been plagued with a bunch of different things that have kind of stunted his growth. So it's another guy that I think could kind of break out, and that should help if Garland ends up being his running mate there. But Garland himself could tend to get better as well. Like, his finishing is just average. His same for his transition offense at the off puck shooting. And usually that's kind of what you want if you want a little bit more offensive consistency anyway from your tertiary support piece in a top 6. So I think the next step is really focusing on his scoring game. And if he does that and hones in on that successfully, he could be like a true first line F3. And there's a few things there. So as we have the development matrix, it's a little harder to see without zooming in on this one. And that's kind of just the nature of the dashboard. But there's a few things that I'm looking at here that jump out at me for Garland. One is his size effect on finishing. We mentioned how he uses it to his advantage in board battles, right? He gets really small, and he does the same around the net front, and that's reflected in pretty good in tight finishing. And that's one thing this is Louis Beer League mention number 3. But one thing I love doing as well, just go to the net and get like as small as you can, like Connor Garland, for an easy tap in. It's so much fun. It'll make people laugh. And it's an easier way to get your teammates' attention than by tapping the ice, because then everybody hears you. If you don't do that and you just go down, your teammate with the puck is going to see you being like, what the hell is he doing? Oh, right. I've always found that to be a pretty successful way, and I love the way that Garland does it. But then we look at how his size is kind of impacting him negatively, and that's more in his long range shooting, right? Like
Yeah.
usually those guys tend to be a little bigger to get more power and flex out of their stick, and Garland just doesn't quite have that available to him. So you put that together with the transition offense. He's a guy who enters or attempts to enter the zone very often, but his success rate is not quite as good. So if he works on that and kind of hones in on his shot selection, because currently he's taking too many shots from far and decides to not settle for shots as often as he currently is. And I know we both know he's got skill. He's got playmaking ability too that I think could tend to be elevated a little bit more. So if he leans into that from range rather than settling for a shot, tries to create for his teammates instead in those situations, or maybe even try to make a quick move around to create for himself, I think that could take him to really, we already saw him, jump a fair bit in his production over the last few years, but I think that could take him even further. I know he's 29 or 30 right now, so the odds of that happening are maybe a little lower, but there's definitely a path to him getting even more production than he currently is.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. I think there's a pocket right now of just opportunity for Garland because the Canucks roster is not great, right? Like
Right.
On a successful team, Garland should be on the third line. Like this is not a guy. This is a guy that's he's just such a gamer. They're like, whatever you want. You want me on the top line? You want me on the second line? You want me on the power play? I'll do that. Whatever you need, I'm good to go. And he just goes out and does it and, succeeds pretty well at it. But ultimately, this is not a guy that should be your go-to shooter or like your offensive option, in my opinion. That said, like I'm just such a fan. I'm such a fan of this player. So I don't think you're going to have to draft him. It's probably a guy that you're going to stream when the Canucks have a good schedule. But I do think this is probably a player that you're going to be holding on your roster for, long stretches of the season, right? Especially if he can get back on power play 1 there. Connor Garland, ADP 227. Right. I think
I'm really surprised it's not higher. Like he had 50 points last year, almost 20 goals, and the environment he's in should help,
You would think so, but I mean, I guess people maybe think like you got like Hito is fully healthy, so does he take a spot on the power play? Now we got Kane. Is he on the power play? Probably not. I think Kane's going to be on the second power play, but I just think people are so down on the Canucks too because it was such a garbage.
I guess that's fair.
So bad. But I projected him for 51 points again in 18 minutes average time on ice, 14 power play points. So kind of a similar season to what he had here. I think just while the Canucks are like this and they don't have, that kind of supplementary offense that, a guy like Pettersson needs, right? Then Garland's still going to eat. He's still going to produce and he's going to do stuff out there. So shout out to Connor Garland, our short king. We salute you. He's got an insanely long neck as well, Connor Garland. You ever seen this? You ever seen his picture? It kind of looks like his head is like a thumb. Like if you just look at that's Connor
Garland.
Head.
Yeah. I can see it a little bit. Sure. That's
not
something I thought I'd hear going into this podcast, but hey, you get surprised every day.
I mean, he's a very attractive man. I want to definitely, put that out there as well. All right. We got one more player to talk about, folks. We're going to the Vegas Golden Knights. It's Vegas, baby. You're so money and you don't even know it. It's Ivan Barbashev. Come on, Bobby. Let's go party. Ivan Barbashev. He's pretty good. You ever heard that song, Louis?
Of course. Oh, yeah. Yes. That one 100% I have.
Oh, damn. All right. Yeah. I
good old Aqua.
I got down to that. Yeah. It's pretty.
Yeah.
That's not what I meant. But anyways, let's move on. Ivan Barbashev. Yeah. This guy's excellent. I just a player that I wanted to highlight a little bit because of he's like the third fiddle there on that line in Vegas. Like he played with Mark Stone and Jack Eichel, both of whom had great seasons. But don't forget about Barbie. He's he did stuff out there. He had a very efficient season. And, he's shown to be efficient in the past too. This guy's shot 25%, 23% in 2 previous seasons. This last season here, 51 points in 70 games. That's a 60-point pace. So that's excellent. That's absolutely rosterable for your fantasy squads. He also had 104 hits, and that's light for him. He's had 180 hits in 2 seasons previous to that. He's getting good deployment, just under 17 minutes. And he's locked in, I think, in the top 6 here in Vegas. And now we got Marner in here. What the hell? Like, do you think, where do you think Barbashev is going to play in the lineup? Do you think he holds on to his top 6 spot? And also, what do you think about the line construction? Do you think Marner plays with Eichel or does Marner play with Hurdle?
So I have actually put a great deal of thought into this. Unfortunately, it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I'm trying to get back into that mindset and remember it. But I think what I settled on is that Eichel and Marner are such phenomenal skaters defensively sound, and just puck carrying and passing, like just everything puck movement relating, they are so good. And they would be the two best on Vegas. So I wonder if their best option is actually keeping Stone and Eichel together and running Hurdle and Marner. Because then you put obviously Barbashev with Eichel and Dorofeyev, I think it would be, on that second line. And you essentially have two first lines as a result of that. And that probably, I think, would be the way I would lean. I'm not sure exactly what they end up doing. Like I know Eichel and Marner together would be such an attractive duo to put, but personally that's what I would do is going Stone, Eichel, and Barbashev. And I listen, the Marner addition really does not help for his lack of power play ice time, but he might not need it. Like one thing that I noticed really a really big jump in this year that just happened relative to the year before was his consistency night over night. So in 2023-24, he was absolutely all over the place. He had as many outings that were like bottom of the league versus elite versus slightly below average, slightly above, and like actually around average. So like you could kind of like blindly throw it at the dartboard, and that's the type of night that Barbashev got in 23-24. But last year, he had a ton of elite outings and was great or better almost every night. And that was reflected in his fantasy. Like I remember I was going up against my buddy who had him, and it's like, okay, Barbashev got 0.4 points tonight. I look at the next game, oh, great, got 29.6. You know, like random stuff like that, where he would just get a hat trick twice in a week, and then the other games he wouldn't do much, but that averages out to being still very, very good, right? Mm-hmm. And with his consistency improving, that's only going to get better. And I do think that his specific toolkit is very optimized for fantasy scoring. He's already a very good player, but there's a lot of players that we talked about, like Beniers, who are great in terms of their contributions on the ice, but it's not reflected in the score sheet as much as you'd like as a fantasy owner. But Barbashev is not that. As we could see, we have the multi-year card for Barbashev, so data from the last 3 years, weighed for recency. And his biggest drawbacks are the defensive impact and the checking ability. Luckily, that doesn't really impact. The defensive side, we don't care about that. Unless you're in a plus-minus league, but he's on Vegas, how bad can it really get? And on the checking side, he's still an above average frequency hitter. It's just the actual forecheck recoveries, which again don't matter in leagues, are not as high. And he's also on the defensive side still involved on breakouts fairly often, which could lead to more secondary assists for him, especially when you have such talented guys who can continue the transition and finish. So he's a guy that just gets a ton of puck touches, one of the league's most underrated puck movers, I would say. And when you combine that with just his excellent finishing that has steadily improved over the last few years and makes it so that it's a little bit more repeatable than other guys who kind of have blip years like this, mm-hmm. I'm really interested to see what he does given all of that and the big jump he just took as a shooter in terms of self-creation, off-rush, and on-cycle plays. He's a guy that will help anywhere offensively, and you'd be pretty good to grab. I'd be surprised, honestly, if he wasn't actually the highest ADP of all the guys we've talked about, given the environment that he's in, the production, and the efficiency he's had.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you might be surprised what his ADP is, but yeah, I love hearing that because that sort of is just confirmation bias to me. I hear what you're saying. I'm like, yes, this is a player that I've watched and that I am excited about, but you know, like you said, it does show up for fantasy, but we're missing any of that power play deployment. So that's why his production looks muted, right? Because this guy only got 3 power play points last year, 5 the year before. So that's not coming anytime soon. But a 60-point pace with no power play time, that's exactly the type of player you want to be targeting a little bit later in your drafts, right? This guy's a beaver, like we mentioned. Also, you know, and you mentioned this as well, but this guy is not a third wheel on the line. Like he can drive play pretty damn well in his own right. You know, scoring chance contributions in the 87th percentile there in the micro stats. He's just really adept at zone entries leading to scoring chances, right? And that's why I'm interested. For me, like it's a solid floor, but it's a pretty low ceiling. I've got him for 53 points this upcoming year, just over 16 and a half minutes time on ice. So again, very similar season. Like why would that change, right? It's hard to predict a big increase in efficiency or like a big decrease, right? You know, he was pretty efficient last year, but he's kind of shown to be that type of player, and he's playing with elite players. And I agree with you too. I think it'll be Mark Stone with Eichel and Barbashev. It worked well last year. Why would they change it? I think Marner and Hurdle could be an amazing combo with Dorofeev on the wing. Jeez.
That top six is insane. Like,
what-
and it's not just the talent in the top six, it's the way all of their toolkits are pretty well optimized as a trio.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you have two first lines, not just by talent, but how they feel, how they check each box by themselves.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to see what they do. As much as I hate Vegas, like they've got a pretty good thing going over there in that top six.
They've won a cup, man. This is terrible. Throw me a freaking bone over here. This is awful. Florida's won 2 in a row. What are we doing? We're starving over here. But that's fine. I'm just happy to be here. All right. I just like watching some nice hockey. That's why I'm into fantasy hockey, because the Canucks have hurt me so much. Like, I need to start cheering for other teams, but I can't do it unless they're on my fantasy team. You know what I mean? Then I can cheer. Otherwise, it's like cheating, right? I don't want to do that.
That's why I as an Ottawa fan, I have a moral rule.
Yeah.
Where I never draft any Habs or Leafs players, or players that are players that I generally dislike, because I don't want to force myself to root for something I don't want to.
You know what? I've done that with Brad Marchand, and I started to like him. You know what I mean? It was weird.
I like Matt. I've always had a good thing for Marchand, because Leaf fans recently have hated him. Habs fans have always disliked him. As a Sens fan, I've had no reason. Like, he's always been a great player, and I think he's hilarious to watch play.
Oh, he's hilarious too. Big fan of Brad Marchand, and I'm a big fan of Louis Boulet. All right, buddy. You're a dang legend. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate that. That's our show. And we had a nice time. Did we, Louis? Is that fair to say?
I think I'd say so. Yeah, some pretty niche, interesting references here and there, but we got around that fairly well.
You bet your sweet bippy we did, buddy. That's what we do. But before I let you go, why don't you tell our listeners about LB Hockey, what you're doing over there, what they can expect, and how they can find your content.
Yeah, so LB Hockey, lb-hockey.com is where I do all of my hockey analytics work. You guys can go there and get access to, there's some free tools, but if you want the whole experience, you could sign up for a subscription and get access to, I think we're in the double digits now in terms of dashboards available, and there's more coming. There's articles there as well. We're, as I mentioned at the start of the show, we're in a bit of a coding in the trenches for coding currently, given the off season, but we've got plenty coming up, both in terms of articles. I think our next one will be on predicting player chemistry, which is a big one I've been working on for a while. Some more dashboards coming soon as well. And you could, if you want to hear more of me, you can find me at the Zoobcast with my friends Adam and Josh, where we talk about the Sens. Again, it's a little NHL, mostly Ottawa, so I don't know how much of an overlap there will be there, but you can find me there. And socials wise, I'm at, I think it's just at Louis Boulet, my full name, LOUISBOULET.bsky.social. I'm mostly on Blue Sky, technically on Twitter, but I rarely check it at this point. I'm mostly just cross-post over from Blue Sky, so find me there. Also on Instagram at lb.hockey_, I think. Getting a username there was a whole trip, but we've got it. That's where you can find me everywhere on all the socials. And thank you so much for having me, Blake. Seriously, I know I always say this, but I love doing this kind of player analysis, and you make it easy to chat with for, what is it now? Hour 22 we've been going. Yeah, that flew by.
We do that, man. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate the work you're doing too. Like, one of the things I love about LB Hockey is you make this information so much more palatable, and it looks amazing too. Reminds me of like playing a video game, and that just kind of touches like something for me, because obviously I love video games. And it's great work you're doing. I'm excited to see what's next. I love your articles too. So shout out to you. You're doing good work there in these fantasy hockey streets. But that's it, folks. That's all we got for this episode. Hopefully it brought you some value, all right, and helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, all three zones, Patrick Bacon, Louis Boulet, right? All that stuff. Many thanks to the band They're There for supplying the music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. And that's it, folks. Celebrate your day. Bye for now.